May 7th, 2015. Am I afraid of something? Am I self-sabotaging as I attempt to move forward with my business? Am I afraid I will fail? Am I afraid I will succeed? Why am I so tired and not ambitious to do anything? What do I mean by tired? Hardly able to keep my eyes open. Shallow breath. Sleepy. Almost depressed. What does that mean? Why am I sad? What's bothering me? Why can't I go deeper? Am I worried about something? If so, what? Perhaps Kim's annual review that's coming up and having to talk about afterlife plans for her, for me. Am I worried about being in a late night class again? If I'm tired now and not able to focus well, how will I do so tonight? And in the following weeks, will I be fully engaged to add to the class? I appreciated our time studying and discussing Rudolf Steiner. His notion of the unknown struck something inside of me. For so many years of my life, I've lived with a vast disconnect of the physical or scientific world and the spiritual. Physical science was a place of fear for me. I had a teacher many years ago who was very intimidating and insinuated women had no place in science. Evidently, this wound deeply affected me. In combination with Pilla's course in the winter and some of our studying in this course, I am intrigued in inquiring about the connection of the physical and the spiritual. The notion of anthroposophy or spiritual science is a place where I linger. The combination of sciences, arts, and religious strivings of humans is a place I want to wonder in more. I'm appreciating the journey of these being woven together rather than harshly separated as they had been in my life before. Rudolf Steiner acknowledged the importance of nurturing the life of the soul in humans and society. There is a need of the heart that arises. Steiner offers a path of knowledge to guide us, guide the spiritual in the human being to the spiritual in the universe. Yes. I consider Barbara taking the time to engage us one-to-one in Goethe conversation as a cherished gift. I want to offer this form of conversation to others. It takes discipline, and I would assert it also takes practice on the part of the facilitator. The facilitator must listen with an inner ear to his or her own perceptions and put them aside. How often do I listen through the lens of my experience, perceptions, and judgments? You must also acknowledge that the conversation is taking place in a stream of time. What the other person is saying is true right now. The next step of inviting the other person into oneself by emptying oneself can be extremely difficult for me. I genuinely want to hear, or sometimes I feel conflicted in such moments. I genuinely want to hear what the other person is saying, and completely emptying myself calls for me to be vulnerable and raises trust issues sometimes. Then we must allow something new to arise from the conversation. As I consider the discipline of facilitating Goethean conversation, I recall the beautiful gift it was to engage in this fashion with Barbara. It was in that conversation, the notion of well-being arose very strongly, and talking through why I had put on hold helping others in a deep way. Through talking, I realized I had peace to engage in walking by others' sides in their journeys, focusing on intentional well-being once again. June 2nd, 2015. We attended a birth last week. It was difficult to watch Megan take so many drugs. My thoughts went back to a time when I was less informed, caved to taking an IV drug when I was in labor, and thoroughly regretted doing so when Becca was born, and so incredibly lethargic she was. I tried not to project my opinions on her decisions. I know Beck struggled with this too. I am listening to an audio book, The Soul of Money by Lynn Twist. She addressed how begging is actually an industry in India and other places with mafia-type bosses at the top of the pyramid. Parents maim or disable their children to create them as more impacting beggars. This is startling to the depths of my being. What do I mean by that? I know when we were in Kolkata, we were aware of a lot of begging and corruption of systems such as police and landlords. I think I knew in my head, I had learned previously about parents deliberately hurting their kids to beg, but I think I was numb when we were there. So to hear the author speak so candidly and describe the scenario so vividly about this took me back to the streets of Kolkata. People have allowed money to have so much power that they're willing to physically harm others to become more effective beggars. I feel sick. What do I mean by sick? I feel like I am weak and can't focus on my thoughts. Why? How? What is such a gain to hurt someone so badly? Are the children aware of the abuse? Do they get drugged to numb the pain? I cannot fathom the answers to these questions, the reality of their lives. I think about our activity to describe David Bohm's dialogue to two other people. The idea of explaining this to others overwhelmed me. Again, to attempt to share about a physical scientist applying his theories, much less quantum physics, to conversation with humans was unnerving. So I heavily relied on my notes as time has gone on, and I submitted a couple of reflections of that experience. I think I am gaining more understanding and playing in a sense of wonder. Again, I acknowledge the discipline in the role of the facilitator. There is no agenda for the conversation. I am a systems thinker and very strategic. So to step back and not have an agenda and help guide conversation to certain outcomes can be difficult for me. I appreciate that the point of the activity is for a group of people to come to a common understanding. Bohm's aim was to help solve crises in society. The group was not to make any decisions, merely to come to an understanding. The illustration Bohm used is a river. The conversation of the group is a free-flowing river. The banks of the river are the various points of view of the participants. The conversation is to build upon one another. Ideally, this dialogue takes place with 20 to 40 people. My daughter was one of the people I described this to, and she was excited and curious at the prospect of going through this activity with a group. She envisioned her leadership and training group at camp, projecting a couple of summers into the future, going through this activity. Her sense of excitement and wonder has influenced me. I play with the idea of how organizations, how politics would function if this took place. Curiosity has arisen. June 27, 2015. What is keeping me from freedom? Fear of the unknown? What do I mean by fear? Worry about what others may think? Fear that I might lead Bex astray? Not believing I can do? Fill in the blank. What does freedom mean to me? No ridiculous rules, no constraints. Breathe deeply. Warmth, joy, and peace. No one questioning my motives, ushering others to their fullest potential. Relax, one breath, one step at a time. Freedom is self-love, self-acceptance, love of others, authentic community. Be able to laugh at myself more. Feeling more rested is freedom for me. Be more adaptable, like Bex, is freedom. July 13th, 2015. Reflecting upon an excerpt from the book Conscious Entrepreneurs, the first C is compassion. I don't think I agree that all people, interactions, and events are my creation. I do believe that how I respond and interact is my creation, my choice. I have a responsibility to be a cause of good, a cause of kindness, a cause of support, a cause of servanthood to humanity and the world. I completely agree that I can choose to be the cause or effect. Effect alludes to powerlessness in response or reaction to my environment, to those who surround me. But if I choose to stand and be the cause, then I can act and live in compassion. My inner being will manifest in my outward actions and interactions. As the cause, I can recognize that I created space for community, living, being with every person whom I interact. I can address problems through a lens of compassion and the lens of cause versus a lens of effect, resorting to a victim mentality due to the circumstances that surround me. I believe when I slip into an effect state of being, the victim mentality not only holds space around me, it ends up living in me, consuming my soul and spewing toxicity into the world. Compassion is a choice I must choose, even to offer to myself. I often extend grace, mercy, compassion to anyone and everyone around me, but I rob myself, my spirit, of the beauty, the love, the forgiveness of the essence of living and accepting compassion for self. Why is it so hard for me to live this way for myself? If someone else shared my life story as her own, I would be weeping in response to how she overcame such tragic and abhorrent circumstances in her life. I would offer her a hug and hold her until she let out all of her pain. I would listen deeply and intently to every detail. I would love big. I would offer suggestions of self-care and invite her into my spiritual, emotional, and physical space. I would be gentle and calm. I would encourage her to be gentle with herself. But when I turn the mirror and see myself, I am rarely so compassionate. In fact, I often belittle myself. My expectations of myself are ridiculously high and sometimes unattainable. I would never ask for so much from anyone else. I am a wounded healer, or so my friend Cheryl likes to refer to me. I do see how I help bring healing into others' lives. I pause right now and wonder if I held a mirror in front of me and lived within compassion for myself, for my spirit, how much more love and healing I could bring to others, unhindered by my self-imposed chains of expectations. I sense I would breathe and live so much more freely, and this liberation would have incredible impact on our world. This is key, Deb. You've been working a lot with the study anything. What would it look like if I gave up this anything? I am going to use the lens of proprioceptive writing as my lens for reflection upon this entire course. Often, I intentionally stopped or paused during my studying, reading, even in our discussions. I would ask the question, what do I mean by, or what do they mean by? Doing so opened up space for further inquiry, exploration, and reflection. What was heard but not written? I think back on our times together and think about the depth of sharing that took place. There were several who journeyed through deep wounds during our times together and were willing to be vulnerable and open themselves in beautiful and powerful ways by sharing their stories with us. I also appreciated the Google community for our class, where we could share thoughts, links for other resources, art, and inspiration. This intentional space and community invited us to share what was heard but not written in our class meetings. How or what do I feel now? I know this class is different than all others I've participated in since I started at Self-Design Graduate Institute. It has ignited the flame of curiosity and wonder within me. I love that I am a lifelong learner, that it is never too late to learn about areas I shied away from in the past. Internally, I've been so drawn to nature, and my soul, my spirit, is such a strong heartbeat in my life that I am looking forward to continuing my studying beyond this course and see how the threads of the tapestry weave together. What's the larger story of this rite? What's the larger story this rite is part of? Specifically, I have incorporated some of my learning in a journaling workshop series I am offering locally in the fall. My hope is this series will inspire others to participate in journaling beyond a grocery list approach, that their hearts and minds are open to exploration. What ideas came up for future rites? This has become a literal question for me. In many ways, and especially through my continued biographical study of Anne Lamott, the strong message of just do it, start writing has surfaced in the past few months. The blockages within are fading away, and my rites will become more and more. I am committing to writing beyond journaling on a daily basis starting August 1st. I am excited to see what arises, what will transpire. 30 years ago, my older brother, who was 10 years old at the time, was trying to get a report written on birds that he'd had 3 months to write, which was due the next day. We were at our family cabin in Bolinas, and he was at the kitchen table, close to tears, surrounded by binder paper and pencils and unopened books about birds, immobilized by the hugeness of the task ahead. Then my father sat down beside him, put his arm around my brother's shoulder, and said, "Bird by bird, buddy, just take it, bird by bird." This is from Anne Lamott. Word by word, Deb, just take it, word by word.